On to business now. Charles Pellegrin is with us. He's starting with a shock report. This is coming out from the Financial Times. It's regarding movement at the European Central Bank.
The British newspaper saying that the president of the ECB, Christine Lagarde, is expected to leave her position before the end of her 8-year term in October 2027, citing a source familiar with her thinking. Lagarde is reportedly looking to leave before the French presidential election, which will take place in April next year. This would allow French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to find a new top central banker for the bloc, and thus avoiding the possibility of a far-right National Rally president from having a say in the decision, whether that person is Marine Le Pen or Jordan Bardella. Both of them are Eurosceptics, of course. The European Central Bank has since responded to that report, saying Christine Lagarde is focused on her job and has not taken any decision regarding the end of her term.
All to follow. Markets now then, Charles. What are they doing?
In Asia, the Nikkei trading higher, again finishing the session over 1% higher after seeing losses since Monday. AI concerns gripping markets elsewhere, not having an impact. And in Europe, meanwhile, we're seeing shares opening the Wednesday session higher as well. The FTSE up 1/3% higher. UK inflation fell to 3% in January, down from 3.4% in December.
Now, some analysis on something rather different. Venezuela wants to talk it out, as it were, with its neighbour Guyana. What's this about?
This is regarding the Essequibo river region, which is partly disputed between the two South American nations. It's been under control of the government of Guyana for over a century, but Caracas claims that most of it actually belongs to them. The case is under review by the UN's International Court of Justice. And in a first statement on the matter since Nicolas Maduro was captured and taken to the US and been replaced by Delcy Rodriguez, Venezuela appeared to tone down the rhetoric somewhat, saying, quote, "The only path forward to solve the territorial dispute is to durably engage in good faith negotiations." Well, there's a lot at stake here. Back in 2015, huge oil reserves were found off the coast of that region. A consortium of oil companies led by the US's ExxonMobil have been exploring and exploiting that block called the Stabroek Block, but the parts of which that were disputed by Caracas have been facing, quote, force majeure risks, meaning that there's been a stop put on any activities there.
And these newfound resources making history for the country of Guyana.
Oil production capacity in Guyana was at more than 900,000 barrels per day last year. That's more than the population of the country and more than the output of its neighbor, Venezuela, which has a longer history of oil production. It's meant that the country has been one of the fastest growing in the world in terms of economic output, with double-digit growth since 2020, as you can see there. And experts believe the changes in neighboring Venezuela could be an opportunity for even more expansion and development. During an energy conference on Tuesday, the president of Guyana, Irfan Ali, outlined a vision to use that oil and gas wealth to help diversify the economy, seeking investments for new airports, a digital payment platform, and a stock exchange.
Now, Charles is treading a tightrope for its last story, or rather he isn't. Mexico is, isn't it?
It's balancing its historical support for Cuba against the threat of looming U.S. tariffs. Washington continues to choke off oil and fuel from the communist Caribbean island nation. Havana imported 60% of the country's energy supplies, mainly from Venezuela and Mexico before. The former is now taking its line from Washington after the abduction of its leader by the U.S. military, and Mexico caved to U.S. pressure shortly after. This, as the situation for ordinary Cubans worsens by the day. Luke Schrager.
From trash piling up around Havana to petrol rationing and even a lack of fuel for jetliners, Cuba may be weathering its worst economic crisis since the 1959 revolution, after a U.S. oil blockade choked off supplies, leaving nearby Mexico to send in humanitarian aid.
The embassy has to thank Mexico, the government, and President Claudia Sheinbaum, who's defended the sovereignty and the right of sovereignty of the Cuban people and the Mexican people.
Threads of support for Cuba have long been woven into the very fabric of Mexican society, with Mexico City maintaining a good relationship with Havana for decades. Both Mexico and Venezuela supplied most of the 60% of the oil Cuba imported, at least until the US abducted the latter's leader in January and threatened Mexico with tariffs to cut off Havana's energy supply, aiming to force it into economic and political reform.
Cuba and us, we are talking. In the meantime, there's an embargo, there's no oil, there's no money, there's no anything.
Ever since, Mexico has struggled to maintain its prior line, but without energy support for Havana and without angering a Washington all too willing to wield trade weapons to get what it wants.
It's symbolic, it's important, and it's showing that Mexico is showing solidarity. But we must not fool ourselves. It's a symbolic act and doesn't help the real problem on the island and its long-term situation.
For now, Cuba has indicated it's open to negotiation with Washington, but not at the expense of its sovereignty, and Mexico has continued to urge for a diplomatic solution, while its support for its neighbour appears increasingly threadbare.
Charles, thanks a lot. Charles Pellegrin with the business. Straight to Emily.